Welcome, everyone. We're going to wait for a few more participants to join us. Looks like a lot of people are coming in now.
Yeah. But in her house, it's a pretty, with no one listening.
Okay, we'll get started now. Hello and greetings on this beautiful spring evening. My name is Laurie McGavin Bachman, and I work in the Adult Programs Department at the Ridgefield Library. Tonight, we are continuing a 6-part series of environmental programs via Zoom that focus on making smart energy choices. These programs are taking place on consecutive Mondays at 6 p.m. through May 24. This series is co-sponsored by the library and the Ridgefield Action Committee for the Environment, known as RACE. Tonight's program, the second in the series, is entitled Installing a Solar System at Your Home with Dwayne Escola. You can put questions in the chat function at the bottom of your screen at any time during the presentation. I'm going to hand it over to Vincent Giordano to introduce our speaker tonight.
Welcome. Thank you, Laurie, and welcome everyone. This is our second episode in RACE's Climate Change Zoom series. Every Monday evening for the next few weeks, a Ridgefielder and RACE member with experience and expertise will speak on an energy topic. RACE, the Ridgefield Action Committee for the Environment, is a volunteer group of like-minded individuals who are concerned about the state of the environment and sufficiently action-oriented to take steps to remedy matters. You're welcome to join us by emailing raceenvironment@gmail.com. If you look at my name tag, that's what it says, raceenvironment@gmail.com. Tonight's presenter has both experience and expertise in tonight's topic, installing a solar system on your home. Dwayne Escola recently retired from Northeast Smart Energy LLC, which is a solar company he co-owned for the past 10 years. Prior to owning this solar company, he was an IBM development engineer for 34 years, designing and managing printer, disk drive, and communication product development. Dwayne has been instrumental in helping Ridgefield in its efforts to add solar panels on our school and town buildings. Dwayne, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. And thank you to the Ridgefield Library for hosting this. Today, even though I've been in the solar business for over 10 years, I recently retired, as was just mentioned. So I'm not going to be selling you anything, but I am going to be trying to help you understand and appreciate installing solar on your home, which benefits both yourself and, of course, our climate. This first slide that I'm going to show you is one that kind of illustrates the point that we wanted to get across tonight. I just yesterday, I went and talked to one of the neighbors, and he gave me a lot of information about a year's worth of electricity and heating oil and gasoline for their cars. And so that's what this represents here. They spent over 500 gallons on gas and over 700 gallons on oil for heating their home, and over 7,000 kilowatt hours worth of electricity. And that's what this pie chart shows. So what we can do with installing solar is we can definitely get rid of this dark blue part of the pie chart. And eventually, by switching to electric cars, we can take care of some of this. And if we switch to heat pumps, we can take care of some of this. And all these subjects will be covered in the next few sessions here at the library. So just to get started, you've all seen homes with solar on their roofs, and this is what we can use to save money and to save, basically stabilize our climate. I've got a few questions that I jotted down here that hopefully we can go through and get some answers. Real quick, it's just, is this really a good time to do this, to put solar on? And how does it work? What kinds of solar is there? And maybe which one looks the best? And is my home really a good place for solar? Does it make a lot of sense? How much solar do I need? What will it cost? Will it save us money? And will it work when there's a grid outage? And if I get a battery to go with it, how large should it be? So I just want to go through some of these fundamentals with you. The first one, of course, is this a good time? And this chart really shows dramatically what's happened to the solar business. When I started the solar business, it was 2009. The next year, we had 1 gigabyte installed, or 1,000 megabytes. And then at this last year, it was over 19,000. So you can see how much in the blue here that it's grown. Now the yellow is even, to me, just amazing how much the prices dropped from when we started to what it is today. This is for a utility scale kind of price, so it's not for a home. A home price is still around $3 a watt, but it started out at 7 and 9. So you can see that from a price point of view, this is the time to look at it, as well as many incentives. Here's just a list. The state has a 10% discount, approximately. Federal government has a 26% state, a federal tax credit, which is, and it's 26% after, of course, you subtract this discount for the state. Also, there's no property tax, there's no sales tax, and the loans vary all over the place. These are the loans for the Connecticut Green Bank, but when you go to your bank, I know you can get loans at many different rates. I just got one. I pretended like I needed solar for my house and got one for 1.9%. But that was when they raised the price of the solar so much, it didn't make sense. So that's something you need to look out for is of course, go get the right loan if you need a loan for your solar. But you can actually get solar for no money down and get a lease. And I'll get to that later. The warranties are now, most of them are 25 years. There's some where the inverter or what converts it from DC electricity to AC is only 20 years, but most of them actually are 25 years now. And here's another thing that's kind of interesting. It makes a lot more sense to put solar on a home in Connecticut than it does in Nevada, which is hard to believe. But the reason that's the case is we pay 22 to 24 cents a kilowatt hour here. And Nevada, the average through the state is less than 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So even though Nevada gets 30% more solar each year than we do, it makes more financial sense to put solar in Connecticut. Now, I mentioned before that you get a lease or a power purchase agreement with no money down. And so you can actually start being quote green or help control this severe weather we've been getting without costing anything. Now, they've recently added a really good rebate. It's not really a rebate, but an incentive by Eversource for any batteries that you put on your solar system. And you'll actually make a little income, $750 to $1,000 actually. they want to use your battery during a high demand time, like when the AC is being run in the summer months. Okay, just a real briefly, what is solar and why does it work? And it's really just radiation, photons coming from the sun, and they land on a panel that's basically made out of glass and silicon and some wires, and of course excite the impurities in the silicon, and you end up with electron flow, and you end up with a circuit. And this was thanks to an invention way back in the 1800s, but then in 1954, Bell Labs actually made one that would work commercially. So here's what a house would look like with solar on the roof and the sun hitting the roof. And the electricity comes out as a direct current, DC. And in this particular house, it has underneath these panels, it has micro inverters, and the inverters are the piece of equipment that just converts it from DC to AC. So then it comes as AC and flows to your main panel and into your house to light and to work any equipment you have in your house. And the nice thing about what they call net metering is that if you're not using it during the day, you're gone to work, and it just comes back out into the grid. Then it goes through this meter and gives you credit. So when it comes back at night, it takes that credit, doesn't charge you for it until it used up as much as it sent out. And this is usually netted out over a month. So on my phone, my solar bill, it'll show what's been sold to Eversource and then what's been purchased from Eversource, and the two are subtracted, and that's what your bill is. So now here's just a picture of what the microinverter that was underneath those panels there. It's just a little small device under each panel. And the advantage of this is that if one it gets a lot of shade, it won't stop the others from working. A little less expensive method is to put in a what's called a string inverter, and that looks sort of like these guys. The another piece of equipment that we have, of course, is just our laptops. So we can watch how these are performing all day and throughout the month, throughout the year. This one is set to month, and it just shows every day what's been produced up to a few days ago. It was the 21st, I guess I took this picture. And of course, where it's down low, that's a cloudy or a rainy day. And where it's up near the top, these are sunny days. And so you'll actually see a weather pattern in reverse if you look at this. The other thing you can see, of course, is you can look at just by selecting year here on the monitor on your computer, you can see what it's like during the year. And this is important, especially when you decide to size a battery for your solar, because you're not going to have much production in January and in December, but you're going to have more than twice that in the summer months. So if you pick a battery, you'll want to pick one that'll get charged even in the the winter months, enough to satisfy what you're needed in your house. Now, a lot of people wonder what we're talking about all the time, but this is a real simple illustration of what a kilowatt is and then what a kilowatt hour is. And it's just a matter of leaving these bulbs on for an hour, and then you've got a kilowatt hour. And what's really neat is these used to get really hot and burn your hands, and that's because they were giving out probably more heat than they were light. Now they send out lights. You'll learn a lot more about this when in the next lectures, where you'll hear about energy efficiency and how wonderful it is that we went to LED lights. Here's back to basically what it looks like in in real life. This is my home, and it shows the black panels we put up here, 20 panels, produces a little over 5 kilowatts of power. And over the year, it'll produce about 70% of what we need as far as energy. Here's another view, and a lot of people are asking about Tesla's roof panels, which are sort of like the shingles on your roof, only they're actually PV panels. The only issue with these is that they are quite a bit more expensive, and if you don't need a new roof, it's much cheaper to just put on regular panels than these. Here's another illustration of what some panels look like out in the field. So you can also do ground mounts. You can do a carport. You can do some of these that actually tilt both directions, so they kind of follow the sun a lot better. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in, and Gavin is going to monitor those, and he'll stop at appropriate times, and we can look at it. So is my home a good match for solar? It used to be that you really needed to have a roof that was pretty much pointed south. This is the north up here. So these roofs would all be good in this circumstance. But the price of panels have gotten so inexpensive that even if you have one that's maybe a little east and a little bit west and not exactly perfect, you can still you could put panels on both sides of this, and you can see here in Hawaii where they're already doing this. This is Honolulu, and one reason they're doing it here is that the electricity is twice as expensive as ours, but it just shows that some of these homeowners are actually putting them on both sides, this one and this one. Most of them would do more like this, where they'd be mostly south and then a little bit maybe west. But anyway, you can see kind of that it's not following the same old rules that it used to have. Here's another thing to think about as far as your roof, and that is, how much shade does it have? If it has too much shade, it's not going to work as well, obviously. And so that's something that we love. We love the trees, and we don't want to tear down a whole lot of trees just to make room for solar. But if you have a roof that's fairly sunny, then it's good to go ahead and see about installing one. This shows you kind of worst case, so that you can see that worst case isn't so bad, actually. This is a roof that is pointed exactly, well, here's a top view of it. It's pointed, the ridge is exactly north and south. And so you'd think, well, you put panels here and it's only going to get the summer and sun in the morning, and you put panels here only in the evening. And that's true. But you only drop 25%. That is significant, from an economical point of view, but it's not a disaster. And if your roof isn't quite this sloped, then it makes more sense. It would only be 10 maybe or 15% drop. But here's the annual production if this roof was pointing directly south. And this is if you put the same number of panels, but spread them between the two roofs. Another thing to make sure is that you do need a roof that has some integrity to it, and not one like this. And also, when you're using, I would say 10, 15-year-old roof is fine, but when it gets like this, you don't want to use it. This shows a flashing, and we've used this for over 12 years now, and we've never had a leak with using flashing like this. And so if you have a good roof and you put flashings in, and then this is what the rails go on, and the panels go on top of that, and it works out really well.
Hey, Dwayne.
You have something, yeah.
Yeah, so there's one question about, like, so if you've got a panel and like a couple of the cells or one of the cells on that panel is shaded, does that whole cell go out? Does the whole panel go out, or is it contributing something, or does it depend on the type of panel you have?
Well, most panels have diodes in them that separate into 3 parts, and some so that you're only going to lose the part that is shaded. But some panels are more sophisticated than that nowadays, so they'll even have it broken into finer points.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're really worried about shade, it's better to use either micro inverters or Solar Edge is a company that has a really good optimizer, and it does the same thing. Each panel is independent, basically.
Okay, cool. And then if somebody had a roof like the one that's on the picture on the right that's really bad, and they were going to need to replace it anyway, does when the federal tax rebate for the solar, does that cover work that you do on your roof as well?
You know, I've run into that case in the case of commercial buildings where you re-roof and you make it white, so
Yep.
that, and then you use dual-sided, basically bifacial solar panels, so that you're getting some reflection off the roof, and then it's allowed to use the cost of the roof underneath the panel system as included in your 26% government tax credit.
Okay.
I really
Okay.
haven't run into what's the case if it's a house roof.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Tesla probably has, so they probably know the answer to that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. I think that it does. Does include the roof. Your roof work does get included.
You're doing it all together.
Yeah. If you do the whole thing as a big project.
Because you're putting on all the shingles as well. That's part of
Yeah.
the roof. That's part of
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Okay, next. Yeah, this is going to look a little busy, but it's just to illustrate what one of the first steps and the second step. The first step is obvious. You want to reduce the amount of electricity your house uses, and you'll hear a lot about that next week. I think in Gavin Watson, in fact, is going to be talking about that. The second step, though, is just to look at your electric bill. Here where the red mark is, they always show 13 months of usage. So you don't want to count the first one, but you just simply add those up, and you'll get you get a figure up here in yellow. You add those up, and you'll find out how much you're using for the whole year. So in this case, this is an electric bill that's just an exhibit in Eversource's website. You're getting over 6,000 kilowatt hours of usage. And then for that much usage, you divide by a magic number, which is really the amount of direct sun you get each day for 65 days in Connecticut. So it depends on the latitude and how many and what your weather's like. But anyway, that would come up so that you would need a 5.6 kilowatt solar system. It's about the size that we put on our house. So that's how you find out about the sizing that you would need to offset all of your electricity. Now, the other half of your bill, you could actually just take your
Dwayne.
cost. Yeah.
Sorry. So somebody commented if you could speak a little louder or get closer to your microphone or something. Some people are having a hard time hearing you. I'm hearing you okay,
sorry.
but
yeah, sorry about that.
you maybe you leaned back slowly as you were talking or something.
It could be, yeah. Thank
okay.
you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. That's good.
Okay, so the next slide or the next page on your electric bill is just to figure out how much it's going to cost you a year. And here it ends up, you take this and you divide by the number of kilowatt hours that month. And if you have the same cost for the whole year, price per kilowatt hour, then you're going to end up with this amount of cost, since you're multiplying that times what you used that year. Now, this tells you is the start of the story of how much is this going to save you. The kind of a typical cost for a home would be $3.30 a watt. And if you were going to put up what was going to take care of everything in that previous electric bill, it would cost around $18,480. There's no sales tax, but there is a state rebate of about 10%. The home, the tax credit is also going to take off 26% of what's left over here. And so if you want to look at it kind of net, this particular system would cost about $12,000. And then over each year, you would save around $1,400. So this is what you'd be doing, in the end, you'd be saving about $14,000. So if you want to look at it kind of big picture, if you don't do anything, you're going to spend $26,000 on your electric bill for the next 15 years. If you install solar, it's going to cost you $12,000.
And I think you said in the beginning that the panels last for about 20, are guaranteed for 25 years, and that some of the electronics just are 20 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're guaranteed for 25 years. So the numbers, of course, look much better at the end of life. And that's not necessarily the end of life. Some of the panels that have been put up in California in President Carter's time are still operating. Maybe
Cool.
not very many, but some. Anyway, so this next chart just shows you kind of the payback period. Everybody wants to know, okay, well, what's the payback? And then when you're starting to save money. And because of electrical inflation, you're going to be saving more than $1,400, and it's going to go up because of inflation. Inflation in the past and what they use now is the 2.9% per year. Now, what you're going to do, though, is you're going to be reducing over 3,000 pounds of carbon a year. So that's the part that kind of, that you're taking out of that first pie that we showed in that first chart, that chunk of pie. Also, you're protecting against electric rate inflation. So your electricity isn't going to inflate anymore, obviously, since it's after a few years it's zero. In California, there's a lot of data on selling homes that have solar on them. Here, there's not much data, but it definitely does lower anything that lowers your utility bill does help sell your house, and hopefully at a higher price. Okay, so now this is a kind of looking at a larger picture here. Is what do you need maybe besides your home? And maybe if you had enough room on your roof or enough, if you wanted to do a ground mount someplace, you could add enough to get rid of all the CO2 that you're using. But for now, let's assume that you want to look at your electric car. Well, your electric car, if it's driven, the average in America is 12,000 miles per year. If you needed to add solar for that, then you would need another 3.5 kilowatts. And so if you already had the 5.5 about, then you get one that's about 16. If you wanted to get rid of your, excuse me, just say 16. I meant 9. If you wanted to get rid of your heat pump, of your oil heat and change it to a heat pump, then you'd need another 4. And so you'd end up needing about 16. Geez, I keep getting that number in my mind. So you don't only need 13. And that's equivalent to about
Yeah.
700 square feet on your roof. Or ground mount takes a little bit more than that. So
But
this,
we're up to about 30 minutes.
okay, thank you. So this slide takes us to that particular case. We go with the 9 kilowatt system instead of the smaller one. And so we can get rid of basically the energy, the gasoline that would be used in one electric car. So in that case, you need one that generates 10,000, a little over 10,000 kilowatts per year. And this would be, the first case I'm going to use is a lease. So it doesn't cost you anything down. And what the equivalent cost for the lease is only 13.7 cents or 0.137 kilowatt hour per kilowatt hour. And this way, your cost would be the 2,000, and your savings would be over 900. So this is the difference that you would see even in the first year with no money down on a lease and these are the Connecticut Green Bank leases. So these are all standard, and it's something that you can trust. Now, there's another way you can go, and well, before I go on, this was based on an inflation rate of electricity of 2.9%. And so your first question might be, well, what if it doesn't inflate? Am I still going to save some money? And so this is what you'd save over 20 years if electricity inflated. If it doesn't inflate, you're not going to save as much, but you're still way above water as far as you're at over 14,000 for savings for the year. So the next slide is going to be slightly different. It's going to be a PPA instead. And Eversource, or not Eversource, Connecticut Green Bank offers this as a 25-year lease or 25-year power purchase agreement, but they inflate the payment instead of being a fixed payment like a lease is for 20 years. This one is an inflated payment for 25 years. So personally, I wouldn't recommend this, but this is what the payments come out to. They come out 16.9 cents per kilowatt hour versus today's grid rate. But this inflates at the same rate this inflates. You're not saving much money. And if you don't have any inflation, you actually could go down underwater on this 18,000 that you'd save. So there's more risk in this one than there is in the 15-year or the 20-year lease. So another question is, will the grid work when you don't have, will the solar work when you don't have grid? So here you go. You have a couple options. One is you could live with a noisy generator and just turn that on when the grid goes off. Or you could go ahead and invest in a battery. Now, batteries are fairly expensive. If you look at the Tesla website, this says 12,000, but recently for one Tesla power wall, it's gone up according to the installers that I've talked to recently, and to the Green Bank in Connecticut. So I raised it $2,000. You still get your tax credit, and you still have some savings. But what's interesting is now you also have this income that you can get from Eversource for loaning your battery to them when they need it. So here's a list of some of the advantages in going with a battery, and of course one of them is big advantage is that you can use your, it makes your grid, I mean, your solar system active, and you don't have any noise. It doesn't cost anything to run it during a blackout. No emissions, and like I just mentioned, generates a slight bit of income.
Hmm.
So now here's the some more information about the Smart E battery loans. They have a special on this spring. So they have a loan up to $25,000 that's only 2% interest. Uh, of course, bigger loans would cost more money, percent wise also. And this is there's some websites that you might want to go on. I can't remember. Can people get these slides? You know, Gavin?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think if you're willing to make them available, I'm sure the library can post them somewhere. And also just to point out too, that we're recording this. So, if somebody goes to the library, they'll, website, they should be able to find this recording and cruise through it till they find the relevant section and pause it and see the slide too. That'd be another way to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so another, go ahead. Another big question is, and this is going to take a lot of research on your part and your solar battery installer part, and that is, how big should your battery be? My personal opinion is that we shouldn't make it too big, because pretty soon we're going to have electric cars that we could just plug in and also would help our house be powered. But that's in the future. Right now, the minimum that you want to do is have what's called a critical load panel, which is a little separate from your main service panel, and just have the real critical items on, uh, the things that you need when the grid's out for a week. Uh, the one that's real critical when you're not in town is this well pump, and that does take 240 volts. So whatever battery you put in, make sure that it'll work with this voltage and not just all 110. So that's really the main thing I have to say. And if there's any questions, I'm welcome to answer some questions.
Yeah. So there are a few questions. So, and I know you covered everything in detail, but just, it's a lot of numbers for people to hold in their heads and figure out. You just sort of roughly go through again, um, you know, cost of buying the panels, the payback over time, and then the better of the lease options, just to give people a way to kind of weigh that out, and see what it gets them. I think the lease option, you start to get money back, save money essentially right away, and it's not costing you anything, but you probably don't in the end get quite as much, right?
Right. Yeah. The one way to look at this is, a lot of people look at the payback, and anything that's short is good, and if it's long, it's not. So the solar ends up with fairly good. It's maybe 8.5 or 9 years, and you can see that here, that if what you're putting down to get
Yep.
the solar system is over $18,000. But what, by the time you get your state rebate and your federal tax credit, is down to 12. So you could kind of say that this is your investment, at least your long-term investment. And I like to look at this chart down here, where you're actually showing, well, what would you be spending anyway if you had to buy your own electricity, which we all do unless we have solar. So you can see that you've made a pretty good investment to save that much money in 15 years. The IRR rate is actually around 8%. Now this chart shows basically the period where if you don't get a loan, this is what you're using. You're using the savings each year to pay back. If you get a loan, of course, this payback is going to be a little bit longer because you have to pay some interest rate. But there's lots of good loans companies around, as well as the Green Bank, the Connecticut Green Bank. Now, when you go to the lease, this one I really like because you're not saving a lot of money, but you're saving a reasonable amount so that you can be happy about both being carbon emission free, and saving some money.
Right.
And if there really is inflation at this rate, you're in the long run, after 20 years, during the 20 years, you end up saving $28,000.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of some people are pointing out in the chat too, that the rates have actually been going up faster than expected. So some people have been pointing out that they installed solar in their house and they're actually paying back even faster than they originally thought it would, because the electrical rates have gone up since they installed it. So I guess one of the things somebody asked is how to get started and everything. So I think, before we got on here, we were chatting about the home energy solutions audit, and that's really the place to start. And we'll be talking about that next week, but that lays sort of the groundwork for being efficient. And then plus you need to do that in order to get those rebates for your solar system anyway, right?
Right. You don't ever want to put some more solar up than you need. Maybe later you'll need it for something else, but for your home, you want to be as efficient as possible first.
Right.
And that
And then,
saves you money.
Yeah. And then one of I think a really good question somebody asked is how would you go about choosing a company? How would you pick a solar company? Because there's so many out there, and there's, they have, each one of them probably has different panels and, whatever. So how do you choose?
Well, I personally, I would choose a local one. And
Yeah.
I'm really biased now because of this last week when I went and got an estimate from a national company. And the national company raised the price of my solar panels that they were going to install by around 40%.
Wow.
And then gave me a 1.99% loan for 25 years. So it really makes no sense to do something like that. And it's so much better is to stick locally and get someone to give you a price for your panels instead of close to $5, something around $3 or $3.50 or $3.30 like I use here.
A watt, right? 350 a watt. So if somebody's quoting, so if somebody comes and looks at, well, you could look at your bill, see how many kilowatt hours you're using, how big a panel system you would need, and then if they're and then do the math essentially, and if it's significantly more than 350-ish or something, there's something wrong with what's going on, right? There's somebody.
Yeah, they're charging a little bit extra for your financing.
Yeah. So let's see. One of the questions that came up earlier, which I wanted to get back to, was the end of life. So say it's 35 years from now, the panels are finally kaput. They've done their warranty 25 years, give me an extra 10, and they're pretty much toast now. What happens to them? Is there any way to recycle them, or is there a system that's getting developed for that?
There's several recycle companies in the United States that will recycle the panels. They're mostly silicon and some wiring and glass, and the frame is metal. So those pieces can all be recycled. What I learned about working on some of the big commercial sites is that you have to send the panels, you have to ship them back to this recycling plant. Now, that may not happen in the future. That, you know, as it gets to be more
Yeah.
prevalent, it probably will be something that's close enough that you could, you know, have somebody local send them over there for a low price. But at this point, they're scattered throughout the United States. And most of the time, they're a long ways away from where you are. So yeah, they do recycle. They might cost you a shipment fee, but whoever owns those panels is who actually pays. So if you're getting a lease, it's the Connecticut Green Bank. So you don't have to pay that. If you own them yourself, then you're responsible for recycling them.
Okay. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Cool. So somebody had a question about property taxes. Say they put a $20,000 system on their houses. They're going to have extra property taxes for that or not?
No, that's a good thing about this is there's no sales tax, no property tax. So nobody's going to be walking down the street, see your solar up there and go back to the tax assessor's office and report you, because they're not allowed in Connecticut to add that to the cost of your property tax.
Cool. And then I had a question about panel efficiency. So the panels, you know, the price of panels obviously been dropping dramatically, and then panels have also been getting a little bit more efficient over time, right? Are there expected any huge breakthroughs or anything like that? Or are we kind of maxed out? And what do you think?
That's a really good question. Also, we can't compare this to what happened in the, you know, the era of cell phones and chips, because there's only 1,000 watts of power that lands on 1 square meter of earth each second. And so that's what we have to work with. And you can't shrink them. So what you've got is you have to be more clever in how you concentrate that, if you can, and convert it into electricity. And it started out 10, 12 years ago. Our efficiency was such that for the same size panels we have today, we had, I think, 185 watt panels. And now for that same size, it's around 300 watts. So they have improved in the last, in the last 12 years, but they're not going to probably see that kind of improvement or anything like drastic drops in the future.
Yeah. So are there companies that would go and look at your house, or maybe just like Google Earth, look at it and just tell you whether or not it was a good candidate without having to go through, you know, actually, digging in deep with, you know, and spending time with a bunch of different solar companies? Is that the sort of thing that you can just kind of get a quick answer? Yeah, it looks like it's going to be, you know, it'll be a good possibility for your place, or no, you got too many trees, or.
Yeah, you could do that fairly quickly. You could, there's a lot of software involved in, that Google has, and some of these also national solar companies have, that they can do it on the spot almost. A regular solar company like ours, we could do it in probably 5 minutes, because what you have to do is you have to look at from Google Earth and look at the roof, measure it, just do a rough measure of the footprint, which is quick with the tools they have on Google Earth. And then you do a street view, and you can tell about what the slope is. That's really the key. Is it a 45-degree slope roof, or is it a flat, almost a flat roof, or is it maybe at 20? And you can guess at that and then come up with an answer quite quickly.
Cool. And then I believe you have a heat pump and the solar panels on your house, right?
Yes.
So one person was asking, if they were going to do this, or they were going to do something. should they do solar panels? Should they do heat pump first? And somebody else in the chat already said do the HES, the Home Energy Solutions audit first. But then, if you've done the Home Energy Solutions audit, and I don't know, your furnace was 10 years old and your roof was 15 years old, which kind of direction, what would you do? Where do you think the biggest bang is? Would you go back to that pie chart you had in the beginning where the oil, if you're burning oil, it's a pretty big piece of the pie, right? If you're looking at it from an environmental point of view, that's a pretty big chunk.
Point of view, I guess nowadays I'd say, man, let's max out the heat oil.
Yeah, the heat, do the heat pump, right?
But
if you're gonna
need much, you may need much larger than your roof for that.
That
would be an issue, obviously.
Yeah, and actually just looking at that graph there, if you just bought a Tesla, then you may not actually, you might want to just do the solar panel thing because you've got your electric car you'd be plugging in. It's between the electricity and the gasoline, it's almost half of that pie. So could go that way too.
By the way, this pie here, this darker one, whoops, I clicked on it. This dark pie is the electricity for Connecticut. Believe it or not, that's twice as big for West Virginia. So
really?
Connecticut has already done a lot of work for us. Yeah,
Oh.
West Virginia has, they still are generating a lot of their power with coal. And so it's exactly twice as big as Connecticut's.
Yep, that's right. Because currently the Connecticut grid is 65% not carbon, right? Something like that.
Right. Yeah. They're, some of that's nuclear, obviously, but
yes,
still,
obviously, yes.
It's not emitting carbon.
Right.
Now, eventually, we want to get rid of all of this. So, which ones you pick, probably doesn't matter so much as long as you get solar up. You're using some of this, but when you switch to electric cars, another big piece of this disappears.
Yeah. So somebody has asked the question, if you had, if you did a 15 kilowatt system, is that less expensive per kilowatt than a 5 kilowatt system? In other words, are there economies of scale if you do a bigger system?
Yes, there are. I would expect you could get a 15 kW one for less than $3 a watt.
Okay.
We used to sell them for, less, around $2.80 for the big commercial ones. Now they're lots cheaper than that even. So
cool. Okay. So if you had a big tree in your backyard, that was what would you do? Would you cut the tree down, or would you, if you had one tree that was blocking your solar, and if you just took that one thing down, it would be awesome. What would you, I don't know, what do you think about that?
Well, I'd have to ask my wife.
Depends how much you like the tree, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then somebody pointed out too in the chat that because you're connected to the grid, there is a monthly charge. Even if you produce more electricity than you consume, you're gonna get some sort of rebate check at some point. But there's also just a monthly charge just for the benefit of being connected to the grid. So it's there when you need it.
Yes, that's correct. I've always had a monthly charge. It's a small amount, but it's still there.
And then, well, what happens? Say you put in a bigger system than you currently need, with the expectation that sometime in the future you're going to do, buy an electric car or do heat pumps. If that extra power that you've generated during the course of the year, do you get a check at some point for that?
You do get a check, but one thing that I didn't mention is that this is the last year of net metering. Connecticut has decided that they're going to go off that. They'll still give you the chance, the choice of using your electricity and you know, having some kind of a pseudo net metering, but you're not going to get a big check at the end of the year if you generate too much, I don't believe. And they're
Okay.
going on to a different system. There's a different system starting next January. So we're really the last year of net metering for Connecticut. And the next system, they say, is going to be just as beneficial economically,
Okay.
but they haven't defined it yet. So
All
we're
right.
kinda
So it's unknown
halfway in between.
what the deal will be.
Right.
Okay. And then somebody's asked the brilliant question about snow. What, you know, does it pile up on your panels? Do you have to rake it off, or, you know, what happens with snow?
Well, when solar companies estimate how much you're going to generate each year, that's taken into effect. And
Okay.
we usually consider that to be between a week and a half of zero production. So when you look at your lease or you look at your production that a solar company tells you you're going to get out of that size solar system, that's already built into it based
Okay.
on history.
Okay.
But
if
another
those-
thing is the steeper your roof, the more production you're going to get.
Okay.
Because
it's gonna
will
slide off. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I have a metal roof on my house, and I know the snow slides right off of that. So somebody asked a brilliant question of, so if you say you install the solar system now, like today, would you be grandfathered in for the net metering thing, or is that just going to kind of go away for everybody? How does that work?
Yes, as long as your grandfather, all the ones that are in are grandfathered in, and anything that's installed this year also is grandfathered in as net metering.
Okay.
Now
Okay.
that I have to add something to that. Right now they have the rebate, the state rebate, and I'm not sure what the answer to this is, but I think that as long as they don't run out of rebate, the answer is correct, that you'll be grandfathered in. But if they run out of the rebate before December 31st, you may actually have to install without that 10%, approximately 10% state rebate in order to keep being, keep in the grandfathered net metering rule.
Okay. Okay.
Lots of ifs and ands and buts.
Yeah, it sounds complicated. And then somebody did ask too, if the snow slides off in a large dump, which it does off of my metal roof, it just all of a sudden it's like an avalanche, woof, and it hits the ground. So is that beneficial or not? Well, it is if you were up on your roof raking it in past years, because you were concerned about
do that.
snow load. So it's really nice. It's just gone. But yeah, if it can just, it will just sort of pile up on things. So in my case, it's definitely dumped on, a bunch of bushes I have outside the front of the house. The snow sliding off my metal roof just hits that and just, buries them, in a big avalanche. So that could be detrimental, but, it probably depends how much of your roof you're covering with the solar that's going to slide to some extent and maybe stop on part of the roof.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for all those good questions, and thank you, Gavin, for handling them.
Oh no, you're welcome.
We're close here to the top of the hour.
Yep. And then so there's one other question about the grandfathering thing. So do you think, does it have to be already installed this year, or you just signed up and get it? It's probably in the murky depths of the rules, right?
I would guess it has to be installed and operational.
Okay.
But that's just my guess.
Okay. Well, that was really great. Thanks, Dwayne. You did a great job. That was really, really cool. And I'm sure you'd be happy to make those slides available some way. So we'll talk to the library about where we're going to put them and where they can put them so people can find them and look for themselves, right?
Right. Sure.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Dwayne. That was an excellent presentation and lots of very valuable information you shared. We will be recording the session. It will be on the library's YouTube channel under the environmental folder in the adult program section. Next week, May 3rd at 6 p.m., how to get a free energy audit with Gavin Watson will be our program. And I want to thank you all for attending and wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Lorraine. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.